I recommend bottle feeding your newborn in a fully supported side lying position. So let's take a look at what that looks like. You could do it like this, one leg propped on the other. Your baby's fully on their side. Their butt is kind of in your belly. You have one hand supporting their back and neck and bottle. I recommend holding it like this between your thumb and your forefinger at the collar is parallel to the ground so that you don't have the force of gravity encouraging it to flow too fast. This could also be accomplished with your feet up on a stool or an ottoman and they're right in the middle like this. You could also swing your knees up onto your couch or your bed, and you're in this kind of little A-frame or mountain position. Again, baby's on their side, butt in your belly. Bottle is parallel to the ground. You could elevate them more. You could have them a little flatter. You could even have them sitting next to you on whatever firm surface. If you are in a position where you don't have an extra set of hands, but you also need to be pumping, for example, sometimes something like this can help. For those bottle assemblies are kind of inconvenient for holding something in your lap, but your baby could be next to you. Part of the reason why I recommend a fully supported side lying position is because your baby knows exactly where they are in space. A lot of times you see paced bottle feeding recommended in an upright position. Part of the reason for that is to accomplish this like gravity neutral parallel to the ground bottle position. And this can work fine. However, some babies are sensitive to not feeling very supported. And in this position, they only have a couple of points of contact with you. So it's their butt sitting on your lap, and then however you're supporting them at their neck and their upper back. You know you're not going to drop them, but they would rather feel in a position like this where the entire side of their body is supported by your leg or by a pillow, or by the firm surface that you're sitting on, plus how you're supporting them at their back and neck. Plus, you might also be using these free fingers that you have if you're holding the bottle like this at the collar to give them some support at the cheek. So lots of points of contact to make them feel comfortable. The other benefit to this side lying position is the path of least resistance for liquid that they are not ready for. So if they got a little bit disorganized or if the nipple flow rate is a little bit too fast, is in their cheek. And they can either organize and swallow or it's going to leak out. And constant leaking is an indication that something is not quite right. However, it is probably preferred that they leak a little bit than if they are on their back, even if they're upright. The path of least resistance for that extra fluid that they might not be ready for or that might be coming too fast is straight down their throat. And so it's basically swallow or drown, or they just might simply be taking bigger gulps than they need to, and they'll eat faster than they need to, or they'll take more than they need to. And so that side lying position kind of prevents that. The other thing that is beneficial about a side lying feeding position is it is kind of how they're primed to feed and the position that they might be in for a lot of breastfeeding. And so if you have had to bottle feed, but your intention is to bring them back to the breast, it is easy to transition back to a breastfeeding position with some bottle feeding. So you could, for example, use your breastfeeding pillow, position them at the breast, but have them bottle feeding like this. So they might be up a little bit too high, but they're kind of in that cross cradle position. And now we're starting to make that association that this is a good and comfortable place to get food instead of in somebody else's arms or in a completely different position. So the other thing I want to talk about is how the bottle is presented to the baby. We want to make sure that we are feeding in a responsive way and that we are working along with their reflexes. And so a couple of the reflexes that are engaged, there's a bunch of them, but a couple of the big ones are the reflex that encourages them to open their mouth and the reflex that encourages them to suck in a meaningful way, meaning like in a way that prepares them for swallowing. So the one that encourages them to open their mouth is triggered by some pressure here on like their lower lip and chin. The little reflex point for meaningful sucking, like in engaging the tongue, is up at the roof of the mouth. Most babies will respond pretty immediately to sensation on the lips. And so they might start like a munching motion. And if there is milk in the bottle nipple, when they start that kind of compressive munching motion, something is going to come out, but they might not actually be sucking in a meaningful way yet because we haven't triggered that reflex on the roof of their mouth. And so it's almost like they're starting off behind because the sequence of things is suck, swallow, breathe, not swallow, breathe, suck, or whatever. So if you present the bottle to them like this, so, and pretend they're on their side, but basically you almost on their side. You want to have the bottle tipped down, like there's nothing in the bottle nipple, kind of rested on their lower lip, and wait for them to open their mouth. Then when they open, you can slide the bottle in a little bit. We're aiming towards the roof of their mouth, and we're waiting for them to engage, to grasp on, latch on to the bottle nipple and start sucking. Then tip it up for milk to flow. You might hear like they're sucking on an empty nipple, but it's okay. That amount of air that they might suck in through the bottle nipple a couple of times is not enough air to cause a problem. And probably they're going to breathe it right back out their nose before they actually swallow it down. Most air intake, most problematic air intake for babies who might be struggling with regurgitation or reflexy type symptoms, most of that air intake is coming from loss of suction at the lips, not through the bottle. There's only one hole at the end here, and this is not like a wind tunnel with constant air flowing. The times that they swallow significant amounts of air is when they're also trying to swallow liquid. So those like couple of sucks leading up to I'm getting ready to start swallowing, it's going to come right back out their nose. And then again, you might see that again towards the end of the bottle where there's really not a lot in here and they finish. That amount of air is not going to be problematic. So it is okay for the bottle nipple to not be full of liquid. It can be full like this. There's only one hole at the end, and there's not a bunch of air that's going to come through there. So, okay, hopefully that all made sense and is helpful.